Hey there, everyone. So, welcome. This is my my cozy office, and I am going to be solo today. So, Haney has been busy putting together his resuscitation conference, ResusX. You guys should all check it out. Go to Crit Care now, and it'll give you all the information. And what have I been doing? I've been doing some work. I've been doing some family stuff, and a group of us we flew to Africa to teach FCCS. Incredible experience. And right before I left, I filmed a session with Haney for his conference talking about proning. And so what we thought is, given the holidays, how busy everyone is, let's forego the live thing and give you a pre-recorded session, a little sneak view of the conference, and maybe some good pearls on why you guys should all be proning more. There's some good physiology, there's some good clinical application, and honestly, it's just a passion of mine, and I just want to share it with you guys. So with that said, enjoy the video. We have a lot of great stuff planned for the end of 2022 and the beginning of next year. We in no way are going away, and all right, that's it. Thanks, guys. All right, welcome everyone. So I am here to discuss proning and why you should be doing it more. So we've all seen this, right? ARDS, dense bilateral airspace opacities, non-compliant stiff lungs, refractory hypoxemia, ventilatory insufficiency, just total badness. And there's been so many treatments with evidence or lack thereof of how we should approach these patients. And I think probably the one that's most exciting and most beneficial is prone ventilation. So that's what we're going to talk about. And you can't talk about proning without talking about Prosiva. So what did they do? Well, they took patients with ARDS and they randomized them. They either proned them or kept them supine. And on average, they were prone for 15 hours. And they continued to do so until either they died or their vent settings decreased to the point where their PEEP was 10 and their FiO2 was 60% or less. And on average, it took 4 sessions. And what they found is that there was a significant decrease in 28-day mortality. The prone group, in fact, was 16% better, 32 to 16% 28-day mortality, just by flipping them on the belly. But the Prosiva wasn't the only one that looked at proning. In fact, there were 4 major trials before Prosiva in big journals, New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, good studies at the time that showed no significance. So how do we make headway of that? Well, the answer is easy. Those studies didn't control the ventilator. You must have lung protective, low tidal volume, appropriate PEEP vent settings to get the benefit of proning. So then COVID came, and what happened in COVID? We had an influx of ARDS patients. All the previous studies had Ns of 200, 300, 400 if they were lucky. All of a sudden, we had more ARDS patients than we knew what to do with. And so Stop COVID, it was a large cohort, the largest cohort of critically ill COVID patients, and they produced a study looking at those proned. Their N was 2,000 patients. And what they found is if you were proned within the first 2 days of an ICU admission, you had a 16% reduction in mortality. Now let's step away from COVID and just look at the sickest of the sick, those on ECMO. This was an Italian group, pre-COVID, all ARDS on BP ECMO, and what do they find? If you flipped those patients while ECMO, they too had a reduction in mortality. I think there's plenty of evidence that says we should flip people on their bellies. But now I'm going to challenge you. I want you to move away, because I think most people probably think of it as a salvage therapy. They have ARDS patient, refractory hypoxemia, not doing well. Oh, I guess we should prone them. And what I want you to start doing, and I hope I can convince you so, is to think of it as a proactive lung protective strategy. That we see patients with ARDS and we think, why shouldn't we prone them? As opposed to the opposite, where we see them with ARDS and we say, oh, I guess we have to prone them. But when should we do it? Well, I don't have a great answer. I'm going to try to explain my thought process, but I think the consensus right now is PF less than 150 early on in the course, probably with paralytics, although evidence is not wonderful, and I guess with, of course, lung protective ventilation. But I'm now going to try to blow your mind. And as great as PF is, and I'll admit, I use PF, I do, I have problems with both sides of the equation, the numerator and the denominator. So let's look into this. Let's think about PaO2. So what is PaO2? PaO2 is the partial pressure of dissolved oxygen in the arterial blood. And look at this equation. I'm sure you guys all know this just on the tip of your fingertips, right? It is the total content of oxygen, and the thing I want to highlight are the constants. Look, the first constant, 1.34, has to do with the amount of oxygen bound to hemoglobin, and a much smaller constant, 0.0031, is the constant for dissolved oxygen. The point being that 1-2%, a very small amount of the oxygen in arterial blood is actually dissolved. And because of that, PO2 can vary greatly from pretty minor things. So let's take a patient. You have a patient there in ARDS. They're paralyzed. The nurse decides they needs to clean them, and they turn them. They de-recruit. We all know these patients take a long time to recover, and they're de-recruited. They get put back on their back. The respiratory therapy slips in there. They draw blood gas. They send it off to the lab. Now that same patient, let's say they weren't cleaned. The nurse decided to do it later on in the shift, and blood gas is sent. You could have very dramatic difference in those two PO2s because of the de-recruitment that occurred. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm making a potentially life-saving decision about proning a patient based on the timing of a blood draw. And PO2, the other things can affect it. The temperature that the blood sample is kept after being drawn, how long between drawing it and running the assay, even the equipment itself matters. Whether it's peripheral or a central ABG matters. So look, I use PO2, we got to, but I'm always a little hesitant. How about the bottom of the equation, FiO2? The problem with FiO2 is it doesn't account for PEEP. And PEEP is so important in how we oxygenate patients on positive pressure ventilation. PEEP is what increases the mean alveolar pressure. That is what keeps the lungs open. That is what allows gas exchange. And so a PF ratio makes the assumption that your PEEP is correct. These guys, very cleverly, were looking at a different ratio called the PFP ratio, where the second P is PEEP. And what do they find? Well, first off, not the point of this talk, but they found that it had a better predictive mortality than PF ratio. But the point of this talk, and the reason I'm bringing it up, is this graph. So what does this graph represent? That each circle is a different patient. Each color is a different amount of applied PEEP. And look at that. Look at that. Based on the amount of PEEP applied, you get dramatically different PF ratios. So there's an assumption when you're using PF to decide if you're going to prone someone. Is PEEP correct? Spoiler alert, I'm not sure we know what the correct PEEP is. So let's go on. I hope at this point I've convinced you, number one, proning's good. Number two, PF is questionable. So then what should we do? Well, I think we really need to understand why we prone patients and the physiology behind it. So here's how I think about it, and there's probably more eloquent ways to wrap your mind around it, but this is my thought process. You have dorsally located, dense, edematous lungs pushing down on the dependent lung. You have a heart that sits in the interior of the chest pushing down on that lung. You have abdominal contents that through an often paralyzed diaphragm is putting pressure on the dependent lung. That dependent lung collapses. And when it collapses, there is no gas exchange. That is what we call shunt, right? There is all perfusion, no ventilation. And of course, perfusion is greater to those parts of the lung because of gravity as the base of the lung. And when we flip a patient, the physiology changes. Everything changes. And so let's look at that. What are some of the benefits? Number one, lung recruitment. So look at this picture. I'm going to look all the way to the left. Look at how much of the lung is on the dorsal part, the bottom of the lung, and then when you flip it, that lung all of a sudden moves to the top. It's unhindered. All of those pressures causing collapse are now gone. And when it becomes unhindered, it opens up. That's what we call lung recruitment. And with that, of course, compliance improves. There's more homogeneous aeration throughout the lung. And of course, gas exchange improves now that the lung is open. But it's not just lung recruitment, it's also decreased shunt. So I find this fascinating. This was from an animal model, but look at this. So the red represents shunt, the blue represents non-shunt perfusion. And what you need to know about the pulmonary circulation is blood goes to the same parts of the lung in the same amount, regardless if the patient is supine or prone. Now, of course, hypoxic vasoconstriction may shunt them away from different lung units within those regions, but for the most part, it's unchanged when you flip a patient. So look at that supine patient. Look how much is going to the base of the lung there, and look how much shunt there is. Now look at the same patient that's prone, same going to the same regions, but all of a sudden, perfusion occurs. But it's not just about gas exchange. It's not just about lung recruitment and reducing the shunt fraction. There's significantly more benefits to proning the patient, and it reduces ventilator-induced lung injury. So let's think about this. When we think about ARDS, there are areas of hyperinflated lung. Those areas of hyperinflated lung have PEEP delivered to them. PEEP gets delivered throughout the whole lung, right? You have to have PEEP in order to keep these patients alive. But when you apply PEEP to those hyperinflated regions of lung, you get barotrauma. So if you can find a way to recruit more lung, decrease the amount of hyperinflated areas, decrease the barotrauma, that's a good thing. The other thing it reduces is atelectotrauma. There are also regions of the lung that are opening, closing, opening, closing, opening, closing. The more you do that, the more atelectotrauma that occurs. By causing a more homogeneous distribution of ventilation across the lung, both of those decrease. The fourth thing that's really important and probably understated is the effects of the heart. So this is important to know. First off, cardiac output really doesn't change whether they are proned or supine. It's generally the same. Now, there are a subset of patients that are preload dependent, and when you take the right atrium, you prone a patient and move it farther down, right? What happens? Right atrium's on the top of the heart, now it's on the bottom. There's more gravity, more blood flow. Sure, they may have an increased cardiac output, but for the most part, that doesn't happen. But what does happen is when you improve oxygenation, you decrease hypoxic vasoconstriction. That is a fancy way of saying RV afterload. So you decrease RV afterload by proning a patient. This is important. So ARDS patients prone to what? RV dilation, RV pressure overload, RV failure. If you can find a way to decrease RV afterload, you should do it. Okay, so we're going to flip them, and we're just going to keep flipping them, right? There has to be an endpoint somewhere. Where is it? Well, let's think about this. There's probably two scenarios. You have a patient with ARDS, you decide to flip them. There's two things that occur. Number one, their PF gets better. Number two, it doesn't. I'm going to make an argument you should prone both those people. So the first one, let's think about the PF that gets better. I always find this fascinating. You have a patient, super sick, you prone them, their PF skyrockets, your intended therapy worked, you got what you wanted. What do? PF greater than 150, stop proning. That makes no sense to me. That's like saying you have someone who's persistently bacteremic, you try different antibiotics, you finally get a right combination of antibiotics, you send a blood culture, it clears the culture, stop antibiotics. That doesn't make any sense. You should probably keep proning those patients. They clearly responded to your therapy. But how about the group of patients that don't respond? Well, here's the argument why you should keep proning them. Their PF stays the same. You should keep doing it. Why? Well, first off, we don't care about PaO2. If we cared just about PaO2, we'd put everyone on pulmonary vasodilators, but we don't do that. Why not? Because it doesn't improve mortality. It improves PaO2, but not mortality. Now, I should say there are a subset of patients with pulmonary hypertension, RV failure, or just need to get to an ECMO center. Those patients, okay, fine, I get it. You probably put them on your epoprostenol, Voletri, nitric, whatever you have at your institution. But I'm talking in general in ARDS patients, we don't put pulmonary vasodilators on just to increase the PaO2. So maybe that group that the PF stayed the same during proning is getting other physiological benefits from them, and you should keep proning them. Or maybe, remember Perceiva, on average 4 prone sessions, some patients were prone 7, 8, 9 times. Maybe you just haven't proned them enough to get the real benefit. Both groups, I say keep proning. So what do? We really have to think about the risks and the benefits. So there are certain things that probably just makes proning unsafe. What are those? C-spine instability, burns, elevated ICP, abdominal hypertension, fresh sternotomy scar, XLAP scar, how about massive hemoptysis or need for frequent suctioning? Those just may not be safe to prone. And then there's a group of patients that are at high risk of death. Your really sick patients who you think you may need to do CPR or defibrillate, you may need to defer proning on those patients. Does it mean you can't do CPR defibrillate when they're proned? Yes, you can, but still probably best to avoid the procedure. You also have to think about BMI. Now, BMI is tricky for me. So if you're an experienced ARDS center that you prone all the time, you probably can take that morbidly obese patient and flip them safely. But let's say it's a pretty new therapy for you. You don't take care of a lot of ARDS, you don't prone a lot, and their BMI is through the roof. Okay, maybe the risk there just doesn't quite give you the benefit that you need, and that's a bad idea. I'd make an argument that patients should probably move to a center that's capable of proning them. That to me is the most life-saving thing we can do for ARDS patients, is proning them. And how about benefits? There are some patients that move from the ARDS stage and now all of a sudden they're fibrotic. They don't benefit from proning, and I get that. That may be indicative of a PF that stays unchanged. It may be indicative of just how stiff their lungs are, but really the way you know is based on how long they've had ARDS. Great. So where do we go from here? I've given you a whole bunch of information. So this is what I want you to do. First of all, I want you to think physiologically. If you have a patient that is early on in their disease course and they're behaving like ARDS, you should flip them. Even patients who don't have ARDS but have severe lung insult, they may benefit from flipping. And I ask you to look beyond the PF. Sure, use it. I use it. But don't be obsessed about it. Don't be dogmatic about the PF as to when you truly need to stop proning. Trust me, it's not benefiting the patient. And finally, just keep on flipping. Thank you.